navigating difficult conversations.
But, you know, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Because when I often have these conversations with you, I feel some kind of way.
You go first. No,
I'll
go. No.
But last time.
Yeah.
Last time you went first, and then it was just kind of like, and then I went, and I didn't have a chance to finish.
Well,
and
is that like a power thing now we have?
Well, I got to
here?
tell you, I'm feeling.
I don't know.
I'm feeling some kind of way about it.
I'm not sure about. I just want to clarify what's going on between us.
But then if things like this happen. They happen.
Yeah.
Navigating difficult conversations.
Even between well-meaning people, not that we're well-meaning, but even there.
Even there. So what we've discovered is there are 4 sort of key steps to navigating difficult conversations. The first being inquiry. Ask questions. Ask questions. Cultivate a conversation. If someone actually says something to you, paraphrase by asking the question. I'm going to attempt to paraphrase what you just said because I'm not quite sure I'm following you. Is this what you said? Very, very helpful to basically getting clarity about what that person is trying to discuss. Step number 2, acknowledge. So important when you're working with students, when you're working with colleagues, to basically acknowledge their perspective. Every conversation is really, really subjective. But in order to first get clarity, then you have to kind of acknowledge the conversation, circle back to what they are talking about, and relate it to the fact that we're all living people in a very large environment. And so our perspectives are really shaped by that. What do you have to say, Geoff?
Sometimes this is what happens in the classroom, so let me focus a little bit on that. You get into something with a student, or students are getting into something with each other, you need to get in there and widen the whole discussion and figure out how to bring in other perspectives. So the way I like to think about this in the classroom is that if students are getting into something, or if they're getting into something with me, I might say, how does this apply to your social work practice outside of the room? So I try and get it out of the room. At the same time, if it's too much outside the room, I might say, let's try and think about what's going on here in the room, because you guys are talking about stuff outside that I think may be applying to something going on in the room. So you have an option as a faculty member to go out if you want to get people to think more cognitively, or to bring it back in if you think you need to get them to connect with it a little bit more.
Excellent point.
And then the final point is to try and take a problem-solving approach. Everything we are doing in the classroom should be role modeling for our students about what they should be doing with their clients and at their agency. So I'd like the class to sort of talk about how can we move forward from here. Sometimes you have rules about how to engage. I think, Tanya, you tend to have rules more than do I.
The ground rules.
The ground rules, which I think you focus on more than I do. We also have differences we talk about in the notion of safe space. I think Tanya feels very strongly about that you can have it, and I think you cannot have a safe space, so we go back and forth a little bit on that. So we have different approaches. Part of this is age-related, gender, and race-related too. We're going to bring a different context into the classroom and draw different things from students. They will project onto us wholly different reactions to whatever we say.
Right. But the point at the end of the day is really, really finding that sweet spot. That spot that works for you, works well for you in terms of incorporating those four steps: inquiry, acknowledgement, advocacy, and problem solving. Sound good to you?
Well, do we get, I don't know. I don't know. I wonder if we left something on the table.
Yeah, but
was that more me? I think.
Well, it could have been.
Let me take ownership.
Yeah.
No, maybe.
But
did you create a context where I could? Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Best of luck.
So now we're going to look at some specific scenarios that might come up in a class. And one of the ones that came up for the whole school was around Freddie Gray and what his death meant for students, meant for the city, meant for faculty, meant for the whole community. And that was an ongoing issue in April for us, and I sort of wonder from you how you handled it, then I'll talk about how I handled that.
Sure. Well, it's really going back to those 4 steps. Those 4 steps being inquiry, acknowledgement, and widening the discussion and problem solving. But I want to stay right here in terms of acknowledgement. There was such a diverse array of perspectives with students, with faculty, with community members. You know, some people could honestly relate on a very real and lived and actualized level to what was going on out in our Baltimore City streets, and certainly with Freddie Gray. Some students were completely removed from the situation and couldn't fathom that happening in their own communities, and certainly right here, and sort of felt helpless. And I think here, again, navigating those difficult conversations is where we just sat in the belly of that space and allowed people to feel whatever they felt based upon their different perspectives, and acknowledging and confirming for them that was the right place to be. And so that was really a critical piece of how I handled it. How did you handle it, Geoff?
I went into the classroom and I said, we need to talk about this. Let's have a situation where everybody can talk about their feelings. This is not going to be a debate.
Sure.
You're not allowed to debate what someone else is feeling or saying. It's a chance to learn from others about what the diverse experiences are. And we're going to spend some time with that. And then I told the class, at some point, maybe at the half-hour mark, 45-minute mark, depending upon you guys, and you can add time if you want to, we're going to talk about the impact on your social work practice. So it goes back to what I said earlier about bringing it back to the fact that we're a profession. What do we do with this? But we first have to take care of ourselves.
Wow, and widening that gap.
Widening that gap.
Excellent, excellent.
I think there was
another scenario.
There was another scenario. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So there was a scenario where a student one time stood up and said, basically that based upon their faith, that they believed that marriage should only be between a man and a woman, and should not be between 2 women or 2 men. And students had different reactions to that statement. How would you deal with something like that?
Well, I think, again, going back to our earlier talk, you want to bring in diverse opinions. So you want to open it up and let other people talk about this. You want to get people's reactions. You want to normalize it and say to the student, if you're feeling this, there are other people in the room that might be feeling it or might be having strong reactions. Or clients with whom you're working, or agencies where you work, or doing your field placements might have people, or your supervisor who has these beliefs. And the issue is to sort of open up the scope, because that's what we do. Remember, we have that student help to come to some kind of decision about that, but we have the whole class and they have their whole community to work with.
So again, this sort of ease between acknowledging where that person is, right, but also widening the gap, possibly in terms of circling back and saying, well, understanding that that is an important perspective that you share, but how are you going to engage with other clients, with other colleagues that share the opposite perspective?
Keeping in mind the code of ethics.
Excellent. So we certainly hope that some of these steps have been really helpful for you in terms of navigation steps. Again, there are 4 steps: inquiry, acknowledgement, widening the discussion, and problem solving. Thanks. Take care.